I remember where I was when I opened this the first time as a kid.
Module S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Yes.
Also by Gary Gygax. I think there's a certain love it or hate it. It depends on how strongly you cling to D&D as traditional medieval fantasy, because this is not that.
No. No.
And when I first saw, as a kid, Module S3 on the store shelf, and I saw this image of, there's like this Errol Otis illustration of this weird flower-like plant monster being shot by a character with a laser pistol. My first reaction was, oh, there's no laser guns in D&D.
That is exactly how
And then I was super confused because I saw it by Gary Gygax. I'm like, oh, well, if Gary says it's okay.
It's very much that, yeah. I had the same reaction. I'm like, I don't like it. Like, Krull was hard for me to get on board with immediately as a kid.
I'm not sure if I like this chocolate in my peanut butter.
Yeah. You will see all sorts of cool technologies. You will see technological antagonists like robots, combat robots, and worker robots, and androids. And the characters will get their hands on all sorts of technology. In addition to some technology that is, as you mentioned now in the Dungeon Master's Guide, like laser pistols and antimatter rifles, you're going to find interesting things in here like anti-gravity belts and new grenades, and maybe, if you're lucky or you have a very generous DM, you might get your hands on a suit of powered armor. I happen to know that Expedition to the Barrier Peaks is Stephen Colbert's favorite adventure.
It is.
And I know that in the past, his paladin actually wore a suit of that armor and forgot his own strength and pulled off someone's head. Not saying that needs to happen, but if it happens,
it happens.
It's something that happens. Yeah.
Mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like Krull.
And what is the beginning of that adventure? Like, how does that take off?
So the good thing is each of these adventures contains two very helpful sections for running them. One is a section on setting the adventure. So if you want to set it in your own campaign or the campaign it was originally intended or a host of other options, there's advice for that. So you can do it in the Barrier Peaks in the Greyhawk campaign setting, or it might take place in the Grey Peak Mountains in the Forgotten Realms. And then there are a number of ways to kick off the adventure. For each of the adventures in this book, we have given you one quest hook that comes from the genie Nefas. And so Nefas has heard a wish that emanates from beyond the stars for this adventure. He conveys that to you, and then he sends you through one of the doors to go answer it. So Nefas might ask you to get somebody's story or find out if something's true or investigate who is saying this wish, because he might not know it. He might have just heard it. Of course, the original quest hooks for each of these are present. So in Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, from the original, a rash of terrible creatures hitherto unknown to this world have begun plaguing settlements throughout the Barrier Peaks, and you can go investigate those as well. Do you like that? I can't forget that. That is word for word from the adventure. So
Hitherto
unknown.
I like anything that's hitherto.
Hitherto, yeah, hither and thither, yes.
Yeah, it is a classic. All right, so that is a spaceship has kind of crashed.
And I'll tell you something else that's really interesting, especially about that adventure, is the original adventure written by Gary Gygax. You had 6 floors of this spaceship that you might expand. Or you might explore, excuse me. The characters might not go to every one, and it kind of ends when they decide to end it. In the updated version of the adventure, we have introduced a central antagonist. Now, I won't say who or what that is, other than the Frog He-Myth, which many might remember. But we've introduced a narrative structure to this adventure that wasn't there before. And not only that, we've actually condensed some of the adventure to fewer layers and removed some of the empty rooms. So if you look at the original map, it is a glorious map. You have key cards to get in some certain rooms. You have kitchens and vending machines and all this weird stuff. So what we've done is we've condensed some of the most interesting encounters from the original. The ones that people say, when I think of Expedition to the Barrier Peaks, I think of, for example, this trio of physical training androids, a boxer, a fencer, and a master of martial arts, right? They think of that. Well, they're there, and you don't have to go as far as you used to get to them.
Yeah.
They're kind of placed in the pathway of the adventure, and we've also added reasons for characters to go and explore different areas of the ships, hoping that you will experience some of the most iconic parts of these adventures.
When I ran that adventure, I'm not sure my players ever liked it as much as I did it. Because wandering around in this giant, spaceship buried in the mountains, there's a lot of danger there. There's a lot of wackiness, and I really loved how all of the D&D elements are present. It's just got this science fiction sheen.
That's what I like about all these modules, because they did define D&D in some way. Like, we would not have Spelljammer necessarily if it was not for this. Or like to say, yes, you can also have sci-fi in D&D. That's one of my favorite things.
Yes, and in my home campaigns, I often lean into that as a theme. It comes up again and again and again. The first time I ran the adventure, the characters all got infected with radioactive spores and became vegapygmies. And so by the time the adventure was over, they were all vegapygmies, and they still wanted to play their characters. So the campaign just basically concluded with them playing plant people with laser guns, because they were able to salvage some of the tech from the ship. And so for a while there, I was running a campaign with Swamp Thing characters, essentially.
I love this.
And then it was Expedition to the Barrier Peaks that inspired me when I wrote an adventure for Dungeon Magazine, in which the characters discover some cargo that was dropped by a passing gnome spelljamming ship. And they have to break into the cargo containers to find the tech locked inside. That adventure was called Gnome Droppings.